Welcome back, everybody, to the XPAND Podcast. This is your host, Zarin Beatty, and I'm here today in the XPAND recording studio with a dear friend, a lifelong tribe member, Lenny Bates.
I'm here. We're doing it.
Bro.
Round two.
You came from New York to LA to Boise.
Indeed.
This is incredible.
I kind of can't believe it either. I landed in the Boise airport and I'm like, I'm in fucking Boise, Idaho.
Yeah, this is your first time in Idaho, right?
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
I
never thought, honestly, I would be in Boise until I met you. And I was like, okay, I could see that. And since I was out on the West Coast, I shot you a text and you're like, can you come? Hell yeah, you could come. So
that's right.
Yeah.
You're always welcome here.
Appreciate it.
Always welcome, bro. And you got here last night and we've literally had a remarkable discussion from the moment you landed. And you've actually helped me a lot in the past 12 hours, however long you've been here. And I really don't know what's about to sprout from this discussion right here, but that's the beauty of it. And that's the beauty in people who come as presently as possible. They're able to really bring different flows and channels of information through them. And you meditate. We're both in the Fit for Service mastermind group. And it's just an honor to have you here, man. So thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, man. It feels like we've been, I wouldn't say podcasting all weekend, but it could have been. The past day it's been since we had such good discussion. But I think also a lot of that goes to the dynamics between people. Like when we show up and we see each other, it's not set up as like teacher student or anything like that. Like we just look at each other as the same and kind of see the potential in each other and talk to that, and that helps us both through discussion. So
100%. Something that you brought up this morning, dude, you've actually blown me away multiple times since you've been here. A few times last night, but something that's kind of a really cool discussion is working through your own paranoia. And this can come under many different circumstances, whether it's public speaking or martial arts or plant medicine or floating or meditation or walking up to an attractive person in some setting. And you brought up working through your paranoia with meditation and it actually being a skill. Where do you have any background in terms of examples that you'd like to share of that you really worked through your paranoia, and why do you feel like that's such an important skill to really acquire?
I would say, I don't know where it first started, but I remember having the skill, I think, through meditation and applying it other ways. So I think the first time we spoke, I spoke about like looking at your feelings objectively. And that's something I've learned through meditation, that you are not your thoughts or you're not your feelings. So getting caught in that rabbit hole and being able to like look at it a little objectively and work through it. That's the same thing when paranoia or like angst arises. And I think a lot of people, when they are in a situation they're not familiar with or feel uncomfortable or not at ease, that arises. And that could be, for me, sensory deprivation tank, that's happened, cannabis, that happens. And the being able to work through that is a skill for other things. Like it's training that tool to be able to use in other areas. And like you said, like public speaking, that's another thing where if you're nervous or you create that, you can easily make that you. Like, I am nervous. I think Kaveh on your podcast did a really good job of just acknowledging that part of you, like the part of you that is anxious or the part of you that feels that way, to give it its due, like know it's there, try not to like shut it up or force it down. And that's also another way. I think the key is actually how you do it. I don't know, but the awareness of that is the gem.
Yeah, that's something that you brought up last night too, the awareness of that act. And whether it's drinking and you have the awareness that you don't want to be doing it, or re-entering old habits, and how are you entering that old habit? Are you doing it to distract yourself completely, or do you hold the awareness of you're doing it but you don't necessarily want to be doing it? And it's interesting how those two interplay with each other, the working through the paranoia and then the gaining of awareness, because essentially they're both the same thing under different constructs, under different scenarios. You were journaling this morning.
I was.
How has that been for you? What has that been helping you with?
Journaling is new for me. I've never, well, within the past year, I started journaling after the ecstatic dance in Austin that we did. It was a interesting feeling I had. I feel like I had to get something out. I knew about the concept of journaling and how good people say it is, but for me, it was one of those things where it just felt weird. I'm like, all right, I'm going to have a diary. That's why I thought of it, which is very ignorant to it. But it's a powerful tool. And I told myself, I think a month ago or 2 months ago, I'm going to try to do it every day. Just make sure I get to journaling, no matter what it is, even if it's just some BS or I'm just writing out thoughts or it's something that I've realized that day and I want to expand on something. And doing that really showed me value in being able to organize my thoughts and put them on paper. So I believe it makes it easier to convey that to others and even to yourself. So that has helped a lot. And I got away from that recently in the past few days since I've been on vacation. I've been waking up, meditating, and then taking at least 10 minutes to journal. So
How do you feel like meditation and journaling relate to one another?
I don't know if I have never thought about that. They're definitely two powerful tools that work on the internal. So I think when you start to train that voice or that thing within, those both act on that. So I don't know exactly how they correlate with each other, but I know that they're both two powerful tools that actually play on each other. There's something special I found, again, shout out to Kave, that he put a little challenge on his story of meditate and then set a timer for 10 minutes to journal. And that transition carries over very beautifully, I believe.
How does that transition help? Where does the journaling help the integration process of the meditation?
I think when you take a minute to sit with yourself, things come up or arise, for me at least. And it may be feelings or thoughts or things I've been ignoring or whatever. And whatever that intuition or that feeling is, whatever sticks throughout that period or I really felt profoundly or not, putting it down helps for me. But also don't want to speak like this is something from my experience, not something I'm a teacher on. So it's just something that I've been trying to do that's been beneficial. I'm not a professional journaler.
Well, it's an honest response, but I feel like perspective in general is teaching people, whether it's right or wrong. That's the beauty in literally sharing and offering perspective on something, because it's built from your entire history as who you are and perhaps past lives. I don't really know. But the aspect of your response is the accumulation of everything you've ever learned, and then it revolves around journaling and meditation to give actual verbal feedback to. And that's so interesting when you are able to hear what you're saying and hold the awareness that it's been built through your entire construct as a human being, because then you offer your very unique lens on a topic, on a subject, and that alone holds extreme value, because only you can perceive through your lens. Your lens can perceive the world in an entirely unique way to any other person, built from your desires and your habits and your fears and your worries and the moments of blissfulness that you've experienced, or your conditioning, as Godzi likes to put it, from society and your parents and your siblings and everything. It creates a formula, an ingredient, a recipe of who you are. And that holds value that other people may not be able to experience or create in themselves. So you just sharing anything, if it's coming from that genuine place and not trying to have some weird agenda on making a point in some artificial sense that may not even mean anything, that's where there's a disconnect there. But just sharing your authentic, genuine truth, bro, that's as much of a teacher as anything.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like that's the thing that resonates with people. Like when you're hearing it, and it's not the way you would explain it, but it hits somewhere for you. And I think when it comes from that genuine place, especially with podcasts, I feel that, you're just explaining your perception of things, which we all are, and it helps either you get there or you may not have the words for something and you hear it and it's like, that's the feeling I've been trying to put together or cultivate. And then it helps you take that on your journey. And it's also holding that thought or belief that my perspective or who I am is obviously different than Zarin Beatty. It makes like a uniqueness to us all. So it, instead of becoming like a zero sum game of like, if you have some, I have less, it kind of eliminates that. You know what I mean? Like whoever you are at your, as Paul Selleck would say, like higher self is manifesting and beautiful in and of his own self. And it's not taken away from me. It actually makes me better in a way. And I think if you hold that belief, it helps a lot.
100%. And to understand that we are all perceiving essentially, ultimately, the same thing from a completely different perspective. And if we really do show up in our own truth, man, the value that we can bring each other is insane. Essentially, we're looking at the same table and you're seeing it from a completely different angle. I'm seeing it from a completely different angle. And if you come together in like an unwritten law, in a sense of being honest about what we're seeing and what we're dealing with, we can really see ourselves in the other person sitting across the table and enter your perspective to a degree and maybe see something that only you can freaking pinpoint. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's what Aubrey talks about in the Platinum Rule of like treat everybody as if they are you. Because essentially, if we can hit a certain kind of perspective, we are all each other sharing some kind of perspective that can help each other see each other inside of each other. That's powerful.
That's a really powerful shit. And thinking of it that way, I find it, I'm very fortunate to be able to hold that belief with you and share that between each other, because I feel like you need a certain level of requirements to hold that. You know what I mean? Like we, in certain parts of the world or certain points of your life, it may be, you have to create that distance from people. At least you feel like it, or your ego feels that way, to make you and why I'm better or why I deserve something or why I should be doing this or whatever. And I don't know, I think through working through a lot of that, like you get that, like this might all be one. Like, you know what I mean? The better you are, the better I am. It's like the tide that raises all ships in that sense. You know what I mean?
I like that. Where's that from?
I think it's a common saying. Maybe not. I've heard it before.
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah.
The tide that raises all ships. What a harmonizer.
Yeah. I think it's I've heard it before and it just stuck with me right away.
I like that.
And when there's like a beauty in someone or something, I find that to be, that saying comes to mind for me. Yeah. It's like, yeah, you know what? Let me not ruin it by elaborating on it. I'm going to let that sit. I'm going to let that be right there.
I respect that. So for you, the last time you talked, I think you're the only person that I've had on twice outside of back-to-back episodes of a part 1 and part 2. So I'm pretty sure you are the only person that has been on 2 times now. And that was only 6 months ago, less than 6 months ago.
Wow.
That is wild. With that in mind, how have you evolved as a person in the last 6 months?
That's an interesting question, because I think, honestly, what we were talking about before about the awareness, I think that's the thing that continues to grow the most, because thinking about doing more things, I think we elaborated on this before, like, should I incorporate this? Should I start doing that? And like, I used to feel like stuffing my schedule, or like the things I did, that was the metric of me growing or not growing. And that helped me in certain pursuits. Like I was in better physical shape, or worked on this project that much longer. And those are the metrics to use of the value. For me now, I feel like the awareness of those things is what I'm learning from that. And it took me till we went to Tulum to realize that, because I was talking about to Joe, a mutual friend of ours, like, what's your morning routine? And I went through mine in a way, and he said, oh, that, like, I remember when I was like that. And he's talking about how being aware of what you need or what should be done versus being locked into the routine of it. And that's the importance. Like, you take a cold shower, but that instant, and like where it puts you mentally, or that feeling after, is like that awareness or that feeling that you get from that. That's the goal, not I did the cold shower.
Absolute truth. How do we as people quantify that? How do you really help show somebody? I've thought about this so much recently that it's so cool that this is coming up right now. How do you help people, not get people, because that's forceful and that's not what fucking meditation's about. How do you help people understand that those are the moments that hold the deepest gems and forms of growth inside of meditation? How do you help people move from those more surface level aspects of what meditation's about and see and perceive and feel and absorb those deeper aspects? Because how many people give up meditating before they even reach a certain level of depth? Mm-hmm. And maybe this is me also, maybe that's the time in their life isn't ready for meditation, and they just get their toes wet, and then they go on about their life for a couple years, and then some seed sprouts that was planted years ago that now they're super into meditation. That happened to me. But when people are ready to kind of go deeper, do you know any idea how to help that aspects or that switch of people leaving too soon and kind of sticking around a little bit longer?
I think things are, obviously when you feel a benefit or see a benefit, that's the thing that keeps people coming back for anything. But also, I think I view meditation as a tool, and I don't know if that's the proper way of viewing it, because also, like, when you say, like, how do you, I don't know, I'm just trying to get through this shit myself. But like through this life experience myself and figuring out what plugs in and works and what doesn't. And for me, and I believe you, meditation is one of those fundamental tools, but there may be another way for other people to get that quote unquote awareness or that perspective through different altered states, whatever that may be for them. And I think, like, when you understand that that's the gem, I think, like, that's where you're trying to get, or that's what you're trying to understand. So I think for different people, like, saying you have to meditate, that gets a little, like, cliche, and I don't know, like, there's some woo-ha that comes with that. But also when you see it practically lived out and you meet somebody, like when I came across you, you're a very different person than I am. Like, I have diarrhea of the mouth. Like, I'm just fucking firing all the fucking time. Like, I don't shut up. And you're very grounded. Like, when you speak, I don't know if you think thoroughly through your thoughts, but it feels that way. Like, you take poise with when you speak. And I would say that's from, I guess you would say, meditation and things like that, to be in the moment. So to be careful with your words and things like that. So I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, something. I hope something popped up for you that we can work with.
You're right, first of all, with everything that you just shared, from my opinion, of course, under the given context of our discussion.
Yeah.
What are the benefits of meditation? Because if you're able, just kind of like what you said, to see that a deeper point, not the deeper point, a deeper point in meditation and a benefit from it that you can access from different entryways and approaches, like whether it's gaining awareness. You can gain awareness under different circumstances. If that is a huge benefit of meditation, that's just literally one point on an endless field of dots and points and recognitions and lessons. Taking a step back from that and looking at this from more of an objective perspective, what are the benefits of meditation? What are the common ones, and what are able to build from those entryway lessons?
Mm-hmm. Well, from, like, to backtrack a little bit from when you were saying, like, that's like the awareness is one part of plenty of things that come from this experience. I think for me, that has been like, that's been it. Like, when you take a tool like meditation and you apply it and you realize sitting with yourself and what's within, you realize there's so much. And then when you look out, there is as well, but there might be a world outside of you and there's like a universe within you. And then when you look in, you realize, holy crap. And then you keep going back to that well or trying to figure out. And then doing that actually makes the outside better. So you realize that the work that needs to be done is actually the internal, and that affects the external. That's been my experience. And I can only speak, like, obviously from my experience.
If I can mic drop right now, I would. If I could just quickly detach this mic and drop it.
But your podcast studio is too good for that, baby. You got these beautiful arms holding up this thing, man.
Bro, you pretty much just boiled down the reason why people should meditate in a short phrase.
I also think that me working on that and crossing paths with people like yourself, who I would say are quote unquote mindful or whatever, it's helped me like see what that looks like. And I think that helps people want to do it or become something or know there's more. And that helps in that direction too. And you finding so much value in that and trying to give that to people, I think is beautiful. Like, I called you one day and I was reading Stealing Fire, and it was talking about how, what was that? I'm going to botch the myth a little bit, but like Prometheus stealing fire and giving it to the humans and what fire meant for human civilization and us as the thing. I believe meditation in a way is stealing fire. Like, it's giving something from quote unquote the gods, or that awareness, and giving it to people. So I think that coming through you in the way that you do is beautiful and scales to others. And I think that what, like, you're doing that you're asking, like, how do we do it? Like, keep living in that truth, keep going forward and keep doing that, because you're showing it. Like, it's coming through you. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
No problem. I wouldn't say it if I didn't feel it, man.
I know. Thank you.
No doubt.
It's really beautiful to hear, because people have done that for me. Don Howard has been an example for me to grow towards and to move on with and for and to and together. And as this collective, it's like this part of our awareness, this part of our consciousness, whether it's our nervous system or whichever, can witness a person who embodies pure wisdom like Don Howard and have it resonate so deeply in like genuine depth and honor and love and compassion and everything, that it almost hardwires our system to move along the same lines. And perhaps every person around us does that to us. And you can have people that are the opposite, quote unquote, opposite of Don Howard and be a more, quote unquote, evil person. And that's probably going to hardwire your nervous system or that part of your consciousness to either gravitate towards that or acknowledge that that's not what you want to be or do. Mm-hmm. So it really feels like every person around us is literally providing us with input on who or how we should behave from their behavior. Just like the people that you have seen inside or outside of work that may have habits that you don't want, mm-hmm. whether it's eating fast food and just going about their day or whatever it may be. And to be able to provide people with some benefit to their perspective, bro, I'm not sure there's a more worthy path to walk. And that's everybody's path that they're walking. Mm-hmm. But to be able to really resonate inside of other people in a beautiful way, it's such an honor, dude. It makes all of the worthwhile moments of deep meditation and struggle and the lessons that are pulled truly worthwhile.
Yeah, because also I believe that you have to live it too. Like you have those moments or you do those practices to get something or tune into something or understand. But it's almost, in my opinion, to some degree, not valuable if it's not practical. So when you see somebody a little further along the quote unquote path than you are, that's like fuel for your fire. Like you're somebody who I hopefully can be my version of that one day. And that helps. Like, and people I believe feel that. And for me, when I was in LA this week, I was fortunate enough to hang out with Chris for a while. And he's one of those people. Like I didn't realize how much, like obviously there was an inkling that we would be boys. And that's what got me out there and just to hang out with him and being with him, just his presence in the life that he's created for himself. Like there's wisdom there. And it's like, hopefully one day I can have my version of that. And I've never been that close to something like that. You know what I mean? Which is nice. To someone I can call a friend, that close to it. It's usually like a mentor or a book or something like that you're learning from. And, you know, it's a little different. So to have it directly in your life is beautiful. And I'm very grateful for that. And that comes across in many different ways and many different kinds of people or things.
This really goes along with, I feel like, a common lesson learned when you go deeply internal is the only way to heal others is to heal yourself. And if you're able to embody your lessons, bro, and your found wisdom, then that is only going to help other people. And by helping other people, you're helping yourself in terms of you are the one embodying those attributes and skill sets and lessons and recognitions. And they should morph your behavior to really move along the framework of what that person would do. When you gain a new lesson, essentially you should change as a person because your behavior and your responses to your environment should shift if that lesson was properly integrated. Therefore, you have a new set of gears to move into your perspective and how you do your daily approaches to anything and or everything. And that boils down to perception, always, bro. It's just any discussion I come to, it seems to boil down to your perspective and what lessons are in there, what lessons haven't been unlocked, what's subconscious or conscious, all of these different components. But this thing goes with you wherever you are. And if you can become more aware of the inner workings of that, then you can reshift those gears that aren't fully set into place, drop habits, gain that ability to now put that energy where you want it, and then apply the energy that has been gained from other freaking moments and recognitions.
Yeah, for sure. And you said something to me the other day that was how many people go through and learn the same maybe fundamental lesson in different ways. And I think that applies to so many different things. People, I think in our circles maybe, or somebody who would be listening to the XPAND podcast is different than, maybe not actually, but maybe learning different lessons than somebody who wants to climb up the corporate ladder. And sometimes that doesn't seem of value to somebody on the other side of the equation. Like one person on one side will say, oh, it's some woohoo stuff. And the other person on the other side will be like, you're not getting the meaning of life or like what this is. But looking at something and wanting to emulate that and knowing that you're not the person you are because you can't do that. And I need to become something else or do self-work to do that is essentially in a way the same thing in a different aspect, or at least could be from the perception I'm viewing it right now. Because you pick up habits. Like you're not the same person who started a job or wanted to become the next level of something and whatever that may look like. And there may be politics in there and other things, but you know that you have to do work to become the next thing or to be better than you are now.
How much of our environment is fueling that? How much of our input around us is fueling what we do pick up?
Oh, I think a lot. And I think that what can change that and what might be the difference in those two scenarios I was just talking about is one can be extremely toxic. Like just because you're quote unquote getting better, what metric are you using to view that? And how many people are getting hurt along the way? And how much not living in truth do you have to do that? So like if you're getting better because you can only measure it with a financial metric, is that really living in that truth or being of that person? And it's weird that because I think you can do that without the air quotes bad, and I don't know if I would, that might not be the right word, bad. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know where we were going, but
Well, two things. One, you also provide me with an embodied being that I would like to integrate into my own behavior. And that's probably why we are able to get along so well. Is we do see parts of each other inside of each other that we may, I fucking hate this kind of phrase, want to be more of. And that's probably the beauty in being around people who are actually growing. Because you're growing, although we may be learning very similar lessons, you're growing in very different ways than I am. But they're still interwoven in the same concept. So to have you growing at your own rate, at your own pace, under different shoots of the ladder, however you want to put that, it helps show me growth that could be happening inside of me. And it's probably up to me to recognize, is that growth that I want to do or growth that I don't want?
and we could sell ourselves on things, especially in the moment of like seeing something and realize, why am I in love with this idea that I wasn't 3 days ago? Is it really profound, or did I see something and like I'm getting attached to that? Like I didn't care about a Porsche before, but now I drove on the coast of Malibu in a Porsche and I'm like, fuck all that. I'm doing whatever I can to get there. That's a bad example because that's actually a beautiful scene. But
that's a good example.
Yeah. But like you can taint yourself with ideas that aren't even yours. Like, you know what I mean?
Taint yourself with ideas that aren't even yours. I think about this so much in the terms of what meditation has really helped me with is literally starting to recognize what feelings are mine and what feelings aren't mine that are somehow inhabiting my body now, or patterns or thoughts or habits. And when you get to that point, and it can happen when you just begin meditation. This isn't like something that only happens when you've been doing it for a long time. But to start recognizing the input and like, whoa, like, why do I even feel this way about politics? Is that because the people around me feel that way? It's because I genuinely feel that way. Mm-hmm. And how often do we just see something in the collective grouping around us and then it somewhere registers, whether it's an ego or somewhere in higher vibration. Higher doesn't necessarily mean good at this point. Not grounded is what I'm referring to as higher. So something that's just easily to latch onto. Or are we able to really see it, resonate with it, and then embody that into our perspective? Mm-hmm. There's a huge freaking difference there, dude, especially in mainstream media. And we kind of touched base on this yesterday in terms of when people read an article and it fuels some kind of thought in them or belief pattern, and now they believe that even more. When is that article even trustworthy, or is it legit? And what are they even fueling? Mm-hmm. Just some idea that they somehow agree with? At what level do they agree with? Is it just the Porsche that they want because they had a good time, or is that even ultimately their path? Mm-hmm. And that's where I get fucking probably pretty lost, is what would be the ultimate path? What should I genuinely be moving on towards? And it feels like the better you know yourself, the better you're able to hone in your path and your behavior and your choices to really align with where you should be moving, not where you think you should be moving, not where other people are moving. Very powerful.
For sure. And I think even viewing it that way, because there's a lot of perspective there to view even the thoughts of the ideas of what you're getting from the article and reinforcing it. Like that might be the thing. And I just think without a certain level of work or pragmatism, I don't know if holding any belief so strongly, like how I just may not be at a point in my life where I can hold a belief so strongly that I know that I'm right, that I can firmly tell you and enforce it. I don't know, because I just, like I said, I just don't know. I'm not at that point, or I don't know if I'll ever be at a point in my life that's like that. And also to realize that all of those things are, for back to meditation, it's allowed me to see that everything is arising in consciousness for me. Like this thought, this opinion, or whatever, or this feeling, or this smell, I wouldn't be able to conceptualize it if it wasn't arising in consciousness. And then playing with the idea of what the hell is consciousness, what is conscious, is like, sounds like woohoo stuff, but it's trippy as hell. And it's like, I don't know. So how could I be so reinforced in something? So yeah, that's that.
Maybe that's a big part of keeping a beginner's mind. Because if you really are able to perceive through the mind of a beginner, doesn't mean you can't learn stuff or have recognitions that really do hold value in your body and resonate. But I mean, some beginners like to say that they know things and they instruct and they whatever. That's a completely different concept. But if you really do keep your openness wide open and keep that mind of a beginner, then what do you really know? And essentially the master knows that they are a beginner, that they know nothing. They've learned so much to understand that they know nothing, whether it's a martial arts or anything.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like you think that because you don't have the perception or the scope to realize that an eyedropper, that's all. Like if the world is an ocean of knowledge and you have an eyedropper and you're only aware of the eyedropper, then you realize like, oh, I have a cup full of water. That's more than the eyedropper. But then you realize there's an ocean and it's like, whoa, like I don't know, but this is what I use to get through this that makes the quality of my life better or the people around me better, which makes me feel like I'm of service, or these virtues that I think I'm expressing or I see in someone else that I want to emulate. And I don't know, I think it could be a very beautiful thing and it could be tarnished just like everything, you know?
That concept has helped me feel overwhelmed so many times. Of like, oh, I have this cup, but there's a whole ocean right here. Or whether it's starting a business and there's 1,000 different things that I know that I don't know. And to now slowly integrate and learn these things and really feel knowledge being absorbed. And that's probably where I really resonate with the concept of embodying your lessons, because that's probably absorbed knowledge. But don't become too freaking attached to it, because it can shift and it can move.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like we're in this limbo state always if you're in a healthy perspective of, I know what I know to a degree. I know that it helps under certain circumstances, but I also know that something might be better. Something might help more. So how do you keep your awareness open while still holding on to what works?
I think that there's real benefit in breaking patterns, whatever that may be, like in terms of the way you think. Like when you're away from your regular, quote unquote, regular life, or you do something that there's a shift of consciousness there, that allows that like learning mind or that openness or open-mindedness to exist, instead of getting caught up in the rut of systems that you're in. Especially the kind of creatures that we are, we get good at doing the same things over and over. Like we learn it. So you're not as mindful when you take the same train ride you do every day versus the first time you do. Like you don't notice the backyards you're looking into or like the towns you're passing and actually how beautiful it is, because you do it every day. It gets mundane to you. And it's like partially a beautiful thing about us that we can adapt that way, but also the value in breaking the pattern and seeing things a little differently is, I believe, where a lot of growth can happen.
This kind of brings back to what you said earlier in terms of not just doing the routine, but the awareness inside of the routine. And you talked about this yesterday at the Boise Fry Company. Just going to plug that in there. It's actually a great place if you're in Boise.
And they're
Awesome
local, so hook
place.
Zarin up.
Super good. Legit.
They'll do right by you when they hear this in Boise.
That's amazing. Sorry. Just lost track. Shit. When you do a routine like that and you finally become aware of what's inside of the routine, instead of just doing the actions that create what you think a person who is healthy would do. That's such a weird box that I find people in so often, dude. They eat a certain way. They do these things because it fits a framework, not because of what's actually happening from those choices.
Oh, agreed. And I think that's something besides meditation, which I don't want to say like a passive thing, but besides meditation that you can do, I think difficult physical pursuits provide that headspace to look at things a little different. Like the angst that you can get caught up in either your life or your head and things seeming existential. Like when you do something difficult, whether it's a hard workout, get in the sauna for an hour. When you leave there, your perspective is way more grounded. That angst is shooken a little bit. And I believe you live I think there's something in us that's meant to do that hard physical thing. There's mechanisms that may be biologically rooted that are there for, in a way, that purpose. I don't know. I just know the feeling I get from that. And I think that that's why that has became somewhat of a routine, because it's not for how it makes me look. It's for the mindset or the person I'm becoming due to that. Mm-hmm. And that space, I need to live there a little longer. Like I need to be there a little longer.
Absolutely. And the biological response, think about heat shock proteins. That's a crazy good example on the benefits of being in a sauna for 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. Is you get this fucking download and upgrade and transition of your body chemistry mm-hmm. to start working more efficiently. And this is so damn cool. So when I started working out years ago, man, for people who don't know, I don't talk about this very often. I used to be so fucking into weightlifting. So into weightlifting. At one point, I weighed 138 pounds. I could bench 275, squat 305, and deadlift 315, weighing 138 pounds. I was so into weightlifting, it's unreal. But the reasons were improper. The reasons were, because I'm a somewhat of a small frame. The reasons were to appear stronger than I feel or I look. And then on top of that, to look like I'm healthy instead of actually being healthy. And it's such an incredible switch in perspective when you start doing things for the right reasons. Mm-hmm. Not just reasons, dude. There's such a fucking crazy good quote or phrase that it's just as much why you do things as much as how you do things. Mm-hmm. And that concept, that intention is so huge. That intention builds your energy into the responses and the results that you're even getting back unconsciously. So how consciously can we bring our awareness, our intentions to start doing things for the proper fucking reasons for ourselves?
And I think that that's learned though. Like that's 100%. That's not given or can't be spoken. I think you learn that. And I believe hearing it or listening to people talk or however else you learn the lesson is a catalyst, not the way. You know what I mean? Like you needed to weightlift to get that understanding because you needed to understand there was a framework you were using. It just wasn't the best one. So you needed to upgrade the framework of that. But you had to view it through this lens for a little while to get that.
100%, dude. And this is probably a big reason why I don't feel like any opportunity is wasted, because something is either showing you how to behave or how not to behave. And that bringing into even how you fucking do things on your own, even why you work out, and getting that ability to reflect, whether it's through a ceremony or a meditation or journaling or mm-hmm. even in discussion, bro. Mm-hmm. And you start to open up and be vulnerable, then you can really start to rewire your own inner workings. That's why perspective is so damn huge.
And I think that like personal sovereignty is really important. That's like a part of the equation, I believe, for anybody successful, is that ability to be alone or work. Like you understand that, so it puts the value in the other side of having a tribe, of having people and all that stuff. Like you need both because you are an individual, but you're also a part of something. So you need to either, in my opinion, experience both or work through both. I don't like to say like you need to, you know what I mean? But yeah, in my experience, that like being alone, extremely valuable. It's taught me lessons that I don't know if I would have learned any other way. And then having the feeling of connection, tribe, all that good stuff has held value too. But I needed one to get to the other, probably in both directions.
1,400% agree.
The most Aaron Beatty quote ever. There should be an expand shirt. There should be an expand shirt of 1,400%.
Holy shit. The most Zarin Beatty quote ever. That is so funny to me. Whew.
You got a lot more legendary shit to do in this life, but as of now,
bro,
you hold
that is hilarious. So agree. That's like a fragment error sentence. So agree. But I really do agree in terms of being alone and being with people, dude. And there's also a very fine balance and art in that. And you kind of, the way you said it, it made me think about yin and yang. Those two things could be alone and with people. All of these yin and yang concepts are in relation to one another. The seasons, winter and summer, are appearing to be opposites, but they're both in relation to one another by being seasons, by being weather patterns. And if you can start to view things as that broader perspective, and how do these two things relate, whether it's human behavior or responses or reactions to stimulus, could be trauma or pleasure. There's very interesting ways to pull back a frame of reference and see things a little bit bigger.
And also, like, as you're pulling back and like trying to gain that bigger perspective, there are a lot of different routes you can take on that. And then to have good, like you're saying, you need evil. To have yin, you need yang. And I think, at least from what I've heard, the ultimate understanding that I've seen conveyed from a person that I hold in higher regard is like a Paul Chek kind of person, to say, like, it either all is or all isn't. So it's either all God or it's not God. So like, you can't say good is God and bad is evil. You know what I mean? Like, it's all that one. And he does I believe a good job of explaining how Christianity puts such an overwhelming burden on the good of Christ and of God and the good in heaven, that it creates such a polar opposite in hell and the devil and what that represents, that it like, you can't push one like that far on the scale without having the other. And to only glorify one side or to put it in that framework or in that light creates a dichotomy that could be bad. And I think that there's examples of a lot of good of that and a lot of bad of it. So I don't know. It was just very interesting when I heard that.
Yeah, there's another concept that's something like you can't have one without the other. And if you think about, it's so funny, I usually don't talk about current events or what's happening in the world. But you think about what's happening to the Amazon rainforest right now, and this disastrous response to nature. When that happens, bro, the good better come up to meet this. And so you get this, and the good rises. What quote unquote bad is going to come up with that? And I talked with Aubrey a few years ago about like the Lord of the Rings concept of the fellowship only gathers when there's a real mission at hand. If there wasn't that extent of evil existing, there would be no reason for everybody to gather and really fulfill their mission. So it's so crazy when everything holds fucking value.
And even on that, what you're saying about like kind of current events, I think we live in a very interesting time because we obviously have the most access and exposure that we do. So it's highlighting so much bad, but also there hasn't been, I don't think, more opportunity than there is now in the world. Sometimes it feels like what's going to win out? Like, is the bad going to hit first before we find a way to deal with it? And then even putting that in the light of that's good is just interesting. It's back to perspective, like you said, but it's also beautiful that we grew up at this time that we can not choose a path, but we just have opportunity. Like that's every day I think about that. I think about when you start to individuate from your parents, you realize like, oh, that's good or that's bad. But then you have the empathy to look at them as humans and not just your parents and realize their beliefs. And then also realize how much opportunity you have now that you were able even to get this far along on the path. You know what I mean? Like you could argue they'd be better than you are if they were just born a generation later. You know what I mean? Who knows? But it's just interesting. And it's also like, that makes me feel like there is like it's almost my obligation to be better and do better because I have the opportunity to. And you can get caught in that rat race, but also there's some truth to it, I think. That's why I think it hits for me.
Yeah, the rat race of that is interesting because how much of that could just be weight on our shoulders that stunts our growth?
Mm-hmm. But I think that it could look different for everybody. Like the opportunity doesn't mean that you have to be a CEO, but the opportunity could be like reverting back closer to maybe even our ancestors in a way of having the ability to just be, to use the awareness to be. When we were on the beach in Tulum and we looked up at the stars and to be able, it sounds like a cliche, but if you live in a city, I live in New York, you look up, it's nice, but you're caught up in all this quote like light pollution. I didn't even think that was a thing. I'm like, light pollution, what the hell is that? I go to Tulum, I'm on the beach in Mexico. I look up, I felt something. I don't even know what it is, but it was just beautiful. And I'm like, this is the way we evolved, like under this. You know what I mean? Like this is natural, quote unquote. This is organic. This is what, you know what I mean? And people make arguments of like all these biohacks and all these things that we're doing. Like that's just getting us closer back to where we were. Like, you know what I mean? Like barefoot shoes. We weren't in heels and stilettos. Like people didn't walk. Like you didn't have those knee problems and all that back issues and all that because we didn't sit in chairs for 8 hours a day. You know what I mean? It just wasn't us. Our bodies not adapt to that. But I'm on a tangent now, but yeah.
Well, with opportunity, a friend of mine brought up a few weeks ago, and this really hit home for me. Everything that we feel is an agreement. So we are agreeing to feel a certain way. If we get cut off in traffic and we feel anger, we are agreeing to feel angry in this relationship with something else. So relationship and opportunity is super interesting when we get into now what we're facing right now in our timeline as a species, especially where we live in freaking North America, is we have way more time to think about stuff now. And with more time to think about things, then we could advance our consciousness even further and really start to bring different things into the world than just worry about living under a roof or eating or what other basic needs as that we need as people. And when we start to get more into we can now think more, we start to discover a lot more about ourselves.
I think so too, and I think that could be good and bad. Like I think reading, I read this is a little sidebar, but reading *Sapiens* made me think that we ascribe good to things when it may not have been good just because it got us here. So when we went from a hunter-gatherer species to agriculture, like the quality of life could have went down, which arguably did, and we just had more people. So if you're using the metric of our population booming, yeah, it's good for us, but like your quality of life could like probably went to trash, or what, you know what I mean? Like the levels I guess you could achieve or the things that quote unquote matter. But all of that also, like you're saying, I'm going to circle back now. Like we have more time now than we ever did. Like it's good and bad. I think that the more time leads to a lot of BS. Like people are like, oh, safe spaces. You can't express certain things or you could be attacked for this. It's like, that goes back to the physical pursuit. Go run a fucking marathon and you tell me if you're going to feel triggered if I say the wrong thing with good intent.
Dang.
You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different things that come into play. So is it good or bad? I don't know, but
Well, ultimately everything's good because it shows us how to behave and how not to behave. So what timeline or what part in this frame of existence are we in that's going to help 20 years from now? We have to realize that we don't fucking stop and think about that. All of these arguments or movements or people getting triggered for dumb reasons, as other people say, or whatever, man, how does that actually help the next 8 years in our laws or how we actually function as a society? We actually don't know.
Or even the right now. Like, I don't think that you're assuming that what you're doing is right. And that is. So, like, you need to see how shallow that is and also how good it could be, because there are a lot of great decisions, there's a lot of great people. And just because you fall into one class or not, or you're trying to push this agenda, like, let's think about the why. Like, that's more important than, like you said, the how. Like Like, why are you trying to create this safe space? Because I don't want to put people in a box and push off a certain part of the population or people who identify this way, feel that way. And that's great. And that should be. But also, like, you can't do it to a point. Well, you can, and people are, but you don't want to lose the quote unquote good you're trying to create. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to become the villain you think you're vilifying, you know?
How often does that happen? Probably too often, unfortunately.
I would agree, but I also think, like, when we're talking about like mindfulness and really trying to understand you and in that process, I think that helps. That creates a little distance from, like, you're not that thing. You're not just that thing. Like, you're this complex thing that's a human. Like, this is just one thing in this fragment that you think you care about and that you should, in a way, see out and see what, as long as you're honest with it and within truth, I think that it will lead to better. You know what I mean? Like, when it becomes a dogma instead of a a true expression, or you trying to live in that truth. You know what I mean?
How do you know if you're living in truth?
Oh, I don't know. No, I don't know, but I think that it does feel a different way, and
feels
it's
different.
better, and I believe it's better for the collective, and you get your interactions with people are different, and sometimes you don't even know why. Like, when you like to be around someone or something's there, like, I don't know how many. Yeah.
No,
And there's a lot of wrong ways to do things. I think that there is a wrong way to do things, but the right, quote unquote, right way isn't like a, this means right. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of ways to do things wrong, but it looks very different for many different people doing it, quote unquote, right.
And right doesn't even necessarily mean truth. Right can be a very subjective piece of input.
Yeah, and then we dig into, like, even what you think truth is. Like, who knows? Like, capital T truth, that means it's universal. Like, can you even conceive a universal truth? Like, no, because we're just maybe no, I don't know, but we're just an individual. So even us trying to look outside of us to say what a universal truth is, I think you can try, but I don't know if you actually can. It's like, it may be nested in your individual truth. Like,
I like the word nested used there. So that made me think of my podcast with Godzi. And he asked me, I think you got the same question. He asked me, how would a higher power view you? Mm-hmm. Or something, or like, how would God describe you? Mm-hmm. And my response was longer than this sentence, but essentially, like, I don't know. I am unable to perceive through the lens of what the divine spirit of all of creation can perceive through. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if they perceive me as something that's a Zarin, you know, under what construct. And, like, if you really want to dig into that kind of stuff, it's really fascinating when even to you, man, I can at least comprehend how you might perceive, but how similar is that to how you're actually perceiving?
Yeah, and like you said, like, you need that ego to differentiate from you to I and I to whatever. And if you have this ultimate all, like this ultimate being, like, it's all of that. So how the hell does it perceive itself? Like, we're just you know what I mean? But I don't know. This is when you get into, like, what do you believe? But I think the way we got there was actually like organic. You know what I mean? It wasn't because this is the way you should think or this is the belief you should hold. And yeah, like, I think there's a lot of, even within those systems, I believe, and I could be wrong here, it's like, we are a piece of the divine. So it's itself. Like, you know what I mean?
Wow, this has been a really incredible hour.
We were in there. But we would have this conversation with or without Mike.
So that's the beauty of it. So. That's the beauty of it. To wrap this up a little bit, we covered some ground. That was dense. Do you have any remaining feelings or thoughts or pieces of input or anything that you would like to share or offer to our platform, to me as a person, to this room, to our discussion, to the life and the present moment that we are in?
when I think of that question, I just think of what I would say to you, honestly. And it's just like living in that, like, all right, for me, I know I'll have this, it could be a voice. I'll just say it's a voice to conceptualize it, of the things I should be doing, or I know I should be doing, or the person I could be. And then the other side of it that indulges in things, or somehow I can do the things that I know I shouldn't be doing. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you listen to that other thing a little more, the first one, that what you can create and what comes through you will be beautiful, and you'll live out a life that could inspire others and could help people do that on their path. And it's going to look different for so many people. And I think you're doing that here. And I would just say, like, bro, keep living in that, man. Like, the Zarin Beatty a year ago wasn't this guy. And because you did that, we get this. I'm sitting in this beautiful studio that is a manifestation of you and what you want to accomplish. And I think you keep doubling down on that with a certain openness. You continue to grow and water that seed, and the people who end up in your life, like, you're a kid from Boise, I'm a kid from New York. Like, how the hell did this happen? I think partially because of that. So thank you. And that's all.
Eternally grateful for you.
Thank you. Likewise.
This brings up a powerful point of deeply organic namaste. And perhaps we are only able to see those versions of ourselves in each other because we legitimately see them in ourselves. And your appreciation, our appreciation of the world, or what we appreciate about other people, I really do believe it shows a lot about who we are as people, or what we gravitate towards or focus on. And for people to even share what you just shared shows a lot, man. It shows a lot about where you are. It shows a lot about what you're recognizing in the world around you. How simple would it have been for you to say something negative about this room under the right perspective, or under a different perspective? And to be able to come into a space and feel the way you do and perceive the way you do, that's only a mirroring reflection, bro, on who you are.
All I can say is thank you. I hope that that's true, because thank you.
Bro, it's so mutual. Thank you, and welcome to Boise.
It's been a pleasure, dog. Thank you, man.
Freaking love you.
Likewise, man. We did it.
We out. Peace.